Well, good morning. This is another day in the Twist and Knot wood shop. This is November 23rd, the day after Thanksgiving, here 2012. And I'm here to tinker around in the shop and do an improvement that I've been wanting to do for a while. Earlier, I had a round, like a bistro table and 3 chairs sitting there just in front of the trash can. And I decided that that wasn't working so well, and I'm going to put a countertop just underneath those 2 pictures you see there, which is 42 inches high, and it's going to come out 7 feet this way. And the reason for that is because of the convenience of walking in the door or out of the building and putting stuff on the countertop. And for another reason, for the dartboard area, we're going to have some bar stools sitting there, so make it more easier, and well, just for all sorts of things like that. Now, what I'm going to do is, the last video, this is a follow-up video for a countertop thing that I did earlier, and what happened was I ran out of memory on my card here in the camera, and I didn't realize that until after I had that countertop underway, and I had already had the Formica glued down and routering around the perimeter and etc., and then I realized that the card was full. So this countertop here is going to show what I would have showed with the other one over there. Also, this is a learning experience for you guys. When you get Formica, doesn't matter where you get it from, it's going to mostly come rolled up in a box. When you unroll it, sometimes getting it out of the box is tough. Oftentimes I end up cutting the box because just pulling it out seems like it's going to damage the Formica. After you get it out of the box and unrolled, lay it down somewhere, somewhere nice, out of the way, so it can relax. And the reason you want it to relax is it makes it easier come the time to adhere it to the substrate, so that you don't have any issues, any problems with it wanting to curl up. And if you do it right, it won't curl up. I mean, you don't have to relax it. I just do it because it makes sense to me. You can try it if you want to rush it, but I advise against it. Okay, so the next video, or the next segment here, you'll see some progress on the substrate and the edging. Talk to you in a while. Okay, this is a continuation of the countertop that I was started on, and I thought I'd show you before I got too much further what I do here. Over there on that other table saw in the corner, I have a sliding table situation where you can put a piece of stock up there and slide the table through, and it makes it a lot easier. But in this case, that table saw there is set up with a dado blade, and yeah, I could have taken the blade out and used that, but I thought what I'd do is show you what you can do if you don't have that type of a setup over there. There's a little shop cart, and regardless of what kind of table saw you have, whether it's one of the bench models or contractors or whatever, if you make yourself a little bench cart like this, so that it's the same height as your table saw top, then you can perform an awful lot of cuts. In this case, that cut there is about 12 inches, since this tabletop is 84 inches long. Therefore, you can see that I just got done cutting that section off there, and a 12-inch cut with the fence set is not a problem. That cart provides a goodly amount of support for you, so you might want to try that. So that's the big section there is the main part of the substrate for the countertop, and over there I've got the strips milled. On the right are the edging strips, and on the left there are the filler strips that I'll show you where they go in a little while. But all the material is milled, and I should have it ready to put the laminate on here in just a little quick order. So I'll get back to you or show you the next part of that here in just a little bit. Bye. Alright, here it is just a few minutes later, and I've got the substrate assembled with the main part that the Formica will be adhered to, and the filler strips around the perimeter. And I like to go 5 inches wide. You could go narrower, but the main reason for doing this filler strips is to give the illusion of it being 1.5 inches thick throughout the whole thing. It makes it lighter. I think I explained that in another video, but I'm going over it again here. And this one is in particular is going to have a leg that stands out here, so it's going to be open from the far end, which is where the wall is, and this out here is out in the floor. So this leg is, I glue in this case right in this perimeter here, because I generally don't do it, but since it's going to be the leg there and an angle bracket, I figured I'd glue it and make it a little bit more sound. 1.25 inch staples is all I use. You can see the pattern there that's on each side, and it doesn't make a difference whether you put the printed side up or down. I just do it down, so I don't have to worry about when it comes time to sand the other side. You'll see that in a while. You don't have to worry about sanding through that or to do what has to be done, and you'll see that. So that's it for right now, and we'll pick you up in a little while. Okay, here we are now with the countertop edging placed all around the 3 sides. Remember, this is going to be a peninsula, and I gotta say that in the first video what happened was you'll notice that this countertop is considerably different. In the first one I ran out of space on the video card and didn't realize it until after the laminate was down, and now I've got a larger capacity video card or SD card, and this countertop will be shown to you as being what I would have done had not the other video card got full. So after your edging is down, what you do, or what you should do, is take and put tick marks around the edging that you're going to sand off. And what happens is when the tick mark disappears here in the field, then you know that your edging is perfectly flat with the in this case upside down on the countertop, the filler strips. And you do the same thing for the other side, and that tells you that you're done sanding there, and then to not go any further. Your belt sander is outfitted with a 50 grit paper, and you sand until and you want to keep the sander moving. Around the corners here you want to have extra tick marks to show you, so that you don't dip it with your belt sander. Yes, you could use a flush trimming bit, but I found that it's much easier doing it with a belt sander. So in just a few minutes we'll come back with the top sanded, and let me set this tripod back up, and we'll show you what goes on after that. Talk to you in a bit. Okay, it's just been a few minutes now, and the top is the edging around the top has been sanded on both the bottom and the top, and I'm ready for the laminate. So the laminate is the problem where most people are going to start pulling their hair out. So let's first talk about cutting it. There are many ways. You can, depending on the size of the sheet, sometimes I'll cut it on the floor with cardboard underneath of it. And the smaller sheets I'll just cut here on the table saw. What if you happen to have a table saw with a cheap fence where there's a big gap beneath the table fence and the table itself? The laminate would go through, get bound up underneath, and you'll get a poor cut, or possibly ruin the formica if you're not cutting it right. So how do you overcome that? Well, if you have a cheap fence, just take yourself a piece of 1/4-inch plywood and a piece of masking tape, stick it there, and now the laminate is sitting on top of the strip of plywood. I just did this for the show of the video here, but try to make this strip as long as the fence is. It doesn't take much, just hold it down with a piece of masking tape, and now your laminate is on top of here, and it won't have any chance of getting bound underneath the fence. So that's something you can do if you decide you don't want to cut it on the floor. Now the top is done and we're prepared to address the formica. What I like to do is cut the formica so it's 1 inch wider, both dimensions. The reason for that is it gives you plenty of room there to move the formica around prior to sticking it onto the applied cement, contact cement. So before you get ready to do that, you want to make sure that the top is nice and clean. I recommend against blowing it off with a hose or air hose. The reason is the dust gets in the air and then it'll end up back on your cement. So just dust it off with a foxtail brush and do the formica too. Also, when you cut a piece of formica, the edge will get furry from the cutting. So we'll take a utility knife and scrape it. You scrape it down, because what you don't want to have happen is one of those little particles falls off and ends up on the substrate, and it will create a bump, and you will begin to hate life because there's no way to get it back out once you stick it down. So if you scrape it off beforehand, all around the perimeters, and make sure there's nothing hanging there, you'll be good. Alright, in just a little while I'm going to put the glue down, and we'll show you how to apply the laminate. Talk to you in a bit. Alright, here it is a few minutes later, and I've got the formica itself, or the laminate, spread with the contact cement. And what you do, or what I do, is since you already have a nice surface there, I put the laminate, on top of the substrate, paint the cement on there, and then move it to another surface where it can, the cement can dry, and then put the cement on the substrate. What do I use? Well, I use Wellwood's contact cement. It's the non-flammable neoprene rubber formula, and I've heard some people saying they've had difficulties with it. I never have. I don't know what their problem is, but here's what I do, and if you do what I do, then you shouldn't run into any troubles. You want to have your coat of the cement nice and uniform, the same color. You want to make sure that you get adequate cement spread on the edges. On the can it says you can come back and double coat it. I never bother about doing that. I just make sure I get the proper coating, and so it's all the same color. What do you do next? Well, you stand back and you wait, or you go eat lunch, you go mow the yard, watch television. It doesn't matter. You got plenty of time. The can says 2 hours. I disagree. You can take up to 6 hours. I've done it before. You also have to make sure your temperature in the building is fairly warm. Right now it's about 70 in here, thanks to the wood stove. But after the glue is done, what you don't want to do is leave the glue, the cement, in any whatever container. In this case, I rolled it on. Depending on the size of it, I will brush it on, but in this case it was a big enough area that I didn't want to take that extra time, so I rolled it. And also in the can it says to clean up, you can use water and soap. Well, yeah, if you want to do that, you could, but it's such a pain in the neck. I just throw the roller away and the brush. So, but what I was saying earlier, you don't want to let that stuff skim over. Keep your can covered. As soon as you're done, pour it back into the can, otherwise it's going to skim over, and then down the road, the next time you use it, you're going to be in big trouble, because what happens is it does this, gets those little chunks on top, and then that'll transfer the next time you put it down onto your substrate, and it'll be ugly, real ugly. So it's now 20 minutes after 2, and so I'll wait until this stuff is done, and then we'll pick up with the next segment. Talk to you in a while. Okay, we're back, and it's now 5 minutes after 4. The last segment showed it was 20 minutes after 2. And what you want to do is now confirm that the glue, the cement is cured, set up properly. And what I do is use my hand, the back of my hand, and I just set it down there, and I just feel all around, and if it doesn't, pull on the back of the hairs on the back of my hand, I know I'm good. Another test you can do is just take a piece of newspaper, lay it on there. If you can pull it off and it sounds like you're ripping off a piece of tape from something, then that's fine. I just use my hand because I trust that. Also, I trust the look of the consistency, the drying, being uniform there and over there on the laminate, and we're ready to go. What's the next step? Well, me here, I do an awful lot of countertops, so I have a box of strips cut up to various lengths. What you want to do is mill out a bunch of strips 1/4 inch thick, and you want to have them at least 6 inches longer than or 12 inches longer than the width of the countertop, and you position them thusly. Now I'm left-handed, so I am going to move the tripod over here to this position, and if there's a finished edge, you want to have your first strip about 10 inches from the end and leave the strip sticking out 6 inches, and you want to position those strips about every foot apart. Now what that's going to do for you, that's going to allow you to set the formica, the laminate, down onto your substrate without any danger of it adhering too fast or before you're ready for it. And the reason for the first strip being a foot or so, 10 inches from the end, is that allows you to set it down, and you'll see that here in just a second. And if you don't, you might want to have, depending on the size of the countertop that you're doing or the piece of laminate, you might want to have a friend help you, but I'm used to this, so I can do this by myself. So in just a second here, I'm going to go grab the Formica. I'll be right back. Notice how I'm holding this with my hands like this. You want to hold your hands like you're hitchhiking. The reason is your fingers will, the Formica is kind of brittle. So if you hold it like this, you won't have any problems. Just pick it up, set it down on the strips, fold it a little bit, and now it's setting in position. Notice that nothing has really happened other than the fact that the surface is dusty, but now I can adjust it. So let's do that right now. You want to adjust it so that you have about, like I said, a ½ an inch, because I cut it an inch wider than the width and an inch longer than the length. Adjust it, make sure you're good all the way around. You don't have to worry about checking the middle, just the ends this way and the width. Okay, now I feel confident that the Formica laminate is positioned properly. The next thing is you need a roller. On the can it says you can use a block of wood and a hammer. Well, that's bullshit. Yes, you could, but it ain't right. It doesn't work that well. You want the J roller because it applies an even pressure and you're not banging the snot out of the Formica and the countertop. So the reason for this 10-inch setback on this first strip is that allows you to get this first part, especially if it's a long countertop, like in this case 8 feet or 7 feet. So now you just roll down this first section. Now that's locked down. I can reach in here, grab this strip, and just throw it behind you on the floor. Hold it up and roll down just a little bit more. And stop right there. Reach over here, grab out the other end, throw all those strips down. Hold this up in the air and roll back and forth, progressively getting and letting the end fall down. Grab the rest of the strips, throw them away, and then continue rolling the Formica. Alright, and there, now it's down. Your concern right now is to make sure that you've got it that far. In the second here, I'll show you the next step. I'm going to continue rolling. There's no sense in wasting video time for that. So talk to you in a bit. Okay, I've got the laminate rolled down to a certain point, and what you don't want to do is put too much pressure around the edges because of the overhang of the laminate. If you're J-roller or you slip or fall or something, tip the J-roller, it could crack the edge. What you want to do is just a little bit of pressure around the entire edges and stop. And then you want to have your routers. In this case, the one on the right is set up with an edge trimming bit for laminate, and then that one is set up with a chamfering bit to put a 45-degree chamfer around what would be the 3 finished edges. The reason I do it that, or suggest that you do it that way, is you don't have any danger of chipping the Formica prior to routing the edges. What I do is, because the glue, the cement might bind up on your bearing on the router, you want to make sure that you don't have any buildup on the bearing, and you also want to make sure that the bearing spins freely. And since I'm left-handed, I always start on the left-hand corner, so we'll take care of that right now. Be aware that even though that you're going to start the routing, you might feel it starting to bump up. That's because the glue, if you haven't allowed it to dry properly, it might end up giving you some curves. Don't worry about it. Here we go. Alright, now that you got that done, if you look right here, you can see a dark spot where the glue, as the router bit was going around, it left a little bit of residue on the side, but it comes off really easily, especially this type of stuff. If you use the other contact cement, what I call rocket fuel, it's a lot harder to clean up. It's more gummy, and it just, well, it's a bitch. So that's the reason why I use this latex stuff. It cleans up a lot nicer, and then you can come back and scrape it off. And those little glue residues that are on the side, like that one over there. Oh, well, you can't see it behind the router. Excuse me. That will interfere with the bearing on the router, and it'll leave a jagged edge. Don't worry about it. It'll clean up. Your next step after doing this is to totally clean off the chips left over from the router, because if that sits on the router base the next stage, then it'll scratch the countertop, and you don't want that. So I'll get back in a second after I get done cleaning that up. Okay, it's just a few seconds later. The top is cleaned off. And I said earlier about not worrying about the little bumps left by whatever glue was there. If you go and clean that off, your chamfering bit will make up that difference for you, so it's going to cut those little bumps off for you. And you don't have to take yourself and worry about cleaning it off or anything like that. Just let the router bit do the work for you. I set the chamfering bit. Well, I generally do it by eye, but what you want is end up with about a 1/4 inch chamfer on your finished edges. Since that end over there is the wall, we don't want to chamfer that, so we'll just chamfer these 3 guys. So now we're at this stage. This is when you come back with your J roller and roll the snot out of it. I do the perimeter edges first to make sure that they're nice and tight, and then I work in the center. So I'll come back in a few minutes after that. Alright, I'm done with that now. I've got the countertops turned end for end from where it was before, and the next stage is to take a sander and sand the chamfer first, and then the edge of your, or the face of your edging, and the next step after that, which I'm not going to show in this video because I can just explain it, is what I do is I take it to the finish room and I run a strip of masking tape all the way along this edge of the laminate. And then in the field I put newspaper and tape that down, and then I can stain the edging, and also the stain gets on the edge, or the chamfered edge of the laminate, and after the stain is dried appropriately, then I come back with a clear finish and clear coat it. But as of right now, the countertop as you see it is the way it's going to look. In some cases, I have this machined 3-inch diameter disc, and I don't want to have this rounded. But in some cases, what I'll do is to round them over. Before I chamfer it, I'll set this disc down and then draw the line and then belt sand it to that line using a square, like a tri-square, to make sure that the sanded portion is straight, or not, not a big old gap. And the belt sander with the 50 grit paper again does an excellent job. You could come back and use your jigsaw to cut off most of it, but the 50 grit paper takes it off really fast. And it's just a short little moment to take care of that. But since I don't want it rounded, I'm just going to ignore that. And other than that, you got the gist of it, and I'm sure that if you follow what I've just showed you here, you will have no problems. Again, the contact cement choice, my choice is that rubber stuff. You could use the flammable material. It's just too much of a mess. It's too much of a problem. Yeah, you can roll it down. I just don't like it. I've got miles of this countertop down, and I've never had an issue. So good luck, and I'm sure that you'll have fun. It's an easy little thing, and well, we'll talk at you later on the next video, whatever that might be. Take care. Bye-bye.